Meet Joe. He inherited a family farm with both surface and mineral rights to the land. Since he has complete control of those minerals, Joe decides to engage an oil and gas company to explore for oil and gas on his land. Joe leases his mineral interest to E&P, an oil and gas exploration and production company. In his lease, Joe retains a 20% royalty interest for all future oil and gas production on his property and receives a one-time cash lease bonus from E&P. Since Joe retained a cost-free royalty interest, he isn't expected to contribute money to the drilling and development costs associated with any of E&P's wells on the property. Because drilling oil and gas wells is risky and expensive, E&P sells working interest units to several investors, including Steve, to share in the risk and expense of drilling a well. As a working interest owner, Steve is responsible for his share of all drilling and operating expenses of E&P's wells. E&P, Steve, and the other investors will pay 100% of the drilling and production costs, but receive only 80% of the revenue, since Joe is entitled to a 20% royalty. Once production of the well begins, Steve decides to sell his working interest to another investor at a premium and retain an overriding royalty in the well. An overriding royalty entitles Steve to a percentage of his pre-existing working interest cost-free, but this only lasts for the life of the well. Once the well stops producing, Steve's overriding royalty will cease to exist. As Joe plans his estate, he realizes that dividing his 20% royalty interest into fractional interest for his 5 children is a labor-intensive and costly process. It requires massive paperwork for the title work, lease assignments, and document recordings with the county courthouse and with E&P for each of his 5 children. At the same time, it also significantly devalues Joe's royalty interest every time it gets divided into a fractional piece for one of his heirs. Joe quickly realizes it is much easier to simplify his estate by selling his royalty interests. So Joe decides to submit his monthly pay stubs and other paperwork to Windswept Royalties to receive an offer for his royalty interests. Windswept Royalties can pay Joe a lump sum to simplify his estate and provide cash to gift his children or to invest in more traditional and easily convertible investments. No longer would Joe have to worry about the risk of volatile oil and gas prices, declining well production, or burdening his children with complex tax returns and year-end accounting associated with owning oil and gas interests. Through careful geological and economic analysis, Windswept Royalties offers a fair market value for Joe's interest, and in one step, the costs, hassles, paperwork burdens, tax complications, and accounting issues of managing those interests are eliminated for Joe and his heirs. Windswept Royalties purchases royalties, mineral interests like Joe had before he leased to E&P, and overriding royalties like Steve had after he sold his working interest to another investor. On a case-by-case basis, Windswept Royalties will consider purchasing a working interest as well. Contact Windswept Royalties today to request a bid about your oil and gas interest, because smart investing requires intelligent planning.